There's a lot of evidence to suggest that the High Republic will be the next era that Star Wars chooses to explore. But I wanted to broach this subject and talk about the possibility that this is yet again another massive mistake by Lucasfilm. Let's get into this. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Star Wars Sunday to you if you're watching this on Sunday. And if you're not, no big deal, but you should know we drop dope Star Wars videos every single Sunday. I'm sitting down with one of my absolute favorite people to talk Star Wars with, James Rosile from the Rebel Scum podcast. How are you, man?
I'm great, and I got to tell you something that I am now an expert in all things MCU.
Oh, yes. I know you got a slight trivia question wrong yesterday when we were talking. You were trying to prove that you knew more than. No, he totally knew something that I didn't know.
I knew that, and it's probably the most important piece of information to do.
Yeah.
The most useless information. I was like, Josh. No, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Happy Sunday.
For sure, man. So the High Republic, you and I have talked a little bit about this, but the reason I wanted to sit down and do this video with you is because I was really surprised when I talked to some of the people that are on the Den of Nerds Discord, and we were just hanging out talking about Star Wars. I was surprised at how many people actually think the High Republic is yet again another mistake by Lucasfilm, and that this blank slate that I think they will have by going to that time period is not actually a blank slate. So let's just start there. What are your baseline thoughts about the High Republic era? Do you think it's a good idea, or can you see where some fans are coming from as far as maybe this is a bad idea?
I can see where fans are coming from. The reality is they have to go somewhere, and they have to tell. I think it's about time they just focus on what they want to focus on, and they need to go somewhere. And you could go in the future, which I kind of wish they would go more in the future than in the past, but whatever. But the past is the past, and then they can establish things within that era, and then they can also utilize characters like Yoda and things like that have been around for long enough so that you have some comfort in them. So I don't think it's a mistake. I think we're putting too much emphasis on the term High Republic. I think when we're in these movies, it'll just be the time period of the movies, and it won't be like I could be wrong, but I don't think every second word is going to be High Republic, High Republic, High Republic. It'll just be, this is the time we're in. It's before Skywalker. It's after Knights of the Old Republic. We're in this area right now, this time period where the Republic reigns supreme. There's no civil war. Let's do this. I feel you. I mean, here's the thing. I had to come to this realization, James, that the potential fans that could be upset by this, I'm not one of them. So, as I'm trying to come to terms with this more and more, Star Wars clearly has a problem with a section of its fan base, right? And so it's really hard for me sometimes to think about what Lucasfilm should do for those groups of fans, because I'm not the one they need to be concerned about, right? I'm not the type of fan that Lucasfilm needs to be worried about, because I'm pretty much riding with it, right? Even though the sequel trilogy for me had a lot of ups and a lot of downs, I still by and large really enjoyed it and liked it. And so I just had to realize that even though me personally, I'm like, High Republic, this sounds amazing. Like Yoda, but like a younger Yoda, these sort of these travel points that have like these beacons and not everything's figured out. I think it all sounds really great. But then when fans brought up a couple of different things to me, mainly, how could you have villains that are Sith in this time period, because it is established in the prequels that there haven't been any Sith in a millennia. And the whole idea of the Phantom Menace and why Palpatine is such a big deal is that there were no Sith, and they were sort of in the shadows. So let's talk about that, man. What are your thoughts about that? Like the Sith and the dark side in general being antagonistic in this time period, does that create problems in canon? No. And because, first of all, the dark side, they've kind of done this thing with the dark side where Kylo's not a Sith, so they could BS us with all that crap. But they can't have Sith because the Sith haven't been around for 1,000 years or whatever, but they have been around clearly because Palpatine's there, Plagueis before him.
Right.
There are Sith. There's always two, right? Plagueis, I don't think was new canon doesn't matter. He's not the first of the rebirth of the Sith. They've been around. They've just been hiding in the shadows.
Yeah.
Where have they been hiding? wherever these new Jedi are taking us. And maybe those Jedis don't survive to come back and tell everybody that Sith are around. Maybe there's another thing at play. Maybe they never find out that they're Sith. The Sith are always lurking in the shadows. So there's a lot of ways they can do it with still making that make sense. On the other hand, this is Star Wars, and nothing ever connects properly anyway, so who cares?
Right, but, and just to play devil's advocate, because I am with you on that, but to play devil's advocate, this is something that has been a thing that fans are not happy with, by and large, the connective tissue, how things have fit together. Yes. And so I think we're both in agreement that, like, however they do it, they need to execute at a very high level. Like,
but even George Lucas didn't connect properly with his prequels and OT, right? So it's just like,
right. But
I know,
but I will say that I think the prequels connect much better to not only each other but the original trilogy than a lot of the stuff in the Disney era. That's just my opinion. But I think that a lot of this is fans probably getting a little too upset and inflammatory, but then again, that's Star Wars fandom, right? But I think that there's also a side of it that's totally fair. I think it's fair to, as a fan, want a canon to make sense. If you retcon something, the retcon has to make sense, and you want to have a fluid canon. And so I think either way they do it, they need to execute at a very, very high level. But I like what you said about, the Sith being potentially around and then not allowing the Jedi that discover them to be found. There could potentially be, like you said with Kylo, like dark side users that aren't exactly Sith. They're just dark side users, maybe even dark Jedi. Now, let's speculate about this. When Dan and Dave were doing their story, right, when they were working on their series of films in that era, it was said, I forget who broke it, I believe it was Variety or somebody, but it was a very, very reputable trade, broke that series of films was going to investigate the origin of the Jedi and potentially the origin of the Sith. And so what do you think about the High Republic era and how they're going to treat the Jedi and how they're going to treat the dark side? Could we potentially see several Jedi leaving the Order? I was just reading the Plagueis novel. I'm almost done through it, rereading it. And there's this moment where Dooku is talking about how he's the 19th Jedi ever to leave the Order.
There's 21, I think. 20.
I'm not sure total what there are because Ahsoka leaves. You know what I mean? Like there's, it goes up from there.
I think it's like the last 20 or something like that. I love that. I love that idea. Like we're just saying, the Sith can be around. Jedi can leave the Order. They can leave the Order to go dark because they see a different path. Again, just back to the High Republic. I think it's important. I think the smart thing about going High Republic is there's no chance of an Empire taking over.
Yeah.
And so they can play around with these other themes and more on the lore of the Force and the galaxy that it all encompasses, and not so much on I want to take over. Like, who cares? We've seen that 9 times now. Let's just focus on something smaller like this or bigger, depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
I love the idea of Dooku's one of my favorites, just because of that aspect of him, where you can see why would a Jedi want to leave the Order. I also like this idea that maybe the council, the Jedi Council, isn't fully established yet.
Right.
Maybe that's a Yoda thing that Yoda does when he's a little bit wiser than when he's 400 years old, right? Like maybe later on he comes up with that. So I like that idea. I'm down for Dark Jedi and leaving the Order. How intriguing would that be to watch? Why? Like I love the prequels. I love Anakin. But the one thing I kind of always wish from Kylo is that we don't see anyone really turn. Like Anakin's is a quick, it's like, oh yeah, I'm bad now. What if we saw someone slowly turn? And the one thing I always kind of thought they should have done with Anakin, I shouldn't say should have done, but is if you started hearing about this Darth Vader character in Attack of the Clones, all of a sudden there's this Darth Vader running around. No one knows who or what he is, but there's this thing running around named Darth Vader or Vader or whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, and Anakin hears about Darth Vader, and he's like the stories of Darth Vader. But then it turns out in Revenge of the Sith that he is Vader, and he's just been turning to the dark side. So I like the idea that maybe you slowly do that. The villain is actually someone that you put trust in right away.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hello. Now, I mean, again, though, we've seen that because we saw it with Anakin. Palpatine, and Anakin, and Kylo reversed with Kylo. So I don't know, but I do like the idea of really diving more into the Jedi and what it means to be a Jedi.
Yeah. And I think you're onto something with maybe the council not being established. I think it's very possible because all we really know for sure, it keeps being teased out in these comic books, which I think is really cool. And obviously Charles Soule has been thinking about this a lot and developing this. And, Luminous, we're supposed to get that announcement at the end of February. There's an investor call on February 4th. So this coming Tuesday, there'll be a big update about Star Wars. Likely we'll be getting some information about Star Wars in the future of what they're going to do with the films. But right now, in the last comic book, there was this idea introduced that the Jedi of that age were building these beacons, and the Republic, even though the Republic, like as Sheev says, the Republic has stood for 1,000 years, it was not all-encompassing, and a lot of the galaxy was unexplored. 400 years ago in the High Republic, the travel to the core from the core to the outer rim was tumultuous. It was very difficult. And so there's likely a lot of systems and planets and perhaps even little organizations or groups. Like I think maybe Mandalore. Like I think it's possible that we see some conflict between the Republic and the Mandalorian. I don't even necessarily want to say empire, but yeah, I think they kind of are maybe conquering out there, and that could be a big sort of villain. And, I think there'll be some political intrigue. But within all of that, obviously the dark side and the light side is intrinsic to a good Star Wars story. That is it, right? It's a duality, but also like this clear evil and this clear good. And I think it'll be interesting to see what the Jedi of that era were doing as they come into contact with new systems. Like, I almost get a little bit of a Star Trek vibe from some of the potential things they could do, where they're like, what do we do with this system? What's the right thing to do here? Should we subjugate? Should we offer our hand? Should we leave them isolated? You know what I mean? And within that, I think it allows for a lot of different interesting little conflicts and perhaps little wars that the Republic was involved with. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. As I compare it to Star Trek,
I know, right?
But there's a lot that they could do, and it's hard to even separate them when you get to the prequel talk and whatnot. I like the idea that maybe the Republic isn't all good either.
Right.
Like, it seems like it's all intact and everything, but it's not all good. Maybe they want to go and they want to take over a planet. They're like, that planet needs to join us. And they go there, and that's the plan. I'm curious what the role of the Jedi would be in that situation.
Yeah.
I really hope the Jedi are more, like I said, if it predates the Council, there's not as many of them, and they're more Robin Hood and his merry men type figures, where it's like Yoda's not Yoda yet, and he's got somebody else that's his mentor or whatever, and they run around, and there's a few of them, and maybe we go on an adventure like that where Jedi are meeting other Jedi randomly, and they kind of get together because they have to overthrow something big.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Definitely potentially for that. I think too. There's as far as I understand it in Legends, the idea is the Jedi are sort of bolstering their numbers as a way to sort of combat against the dark side. So, during this whole time period, they're actively recruiting and they're trying to find Force sensitives. And so perhaps some of it has to do with that, where they go into these new regions, they find these new systems, and they're mostly concerned with just recruiting more Force sensitives, because the idea is you don't want Force sensitives out there without Jedi teaching and direction, because it could potentially lead to the rise of dark side users or the Sith, right? And so perhaps the conflict's going to come there. But yeah, man, I mean, I think in general it presents a lot of different opportunities, but with that, and this kind of gets back to the main point, is that with those opportunities also comes a lot of concern from fans that they're going to alter things, change things, make things make less sense, devalue certain things. Do you know what I mean? And so, again, I pose the question to you before we get out of here. What would you say to the people in your circle or in your friends group that are concerned? If there were people concerned, what would you say to them to sort of alleviate that?
I think no matter what, things are going to begin to get devalued in Star Wars. The more you get, the more that it's just inevitable. It's going to happen because you're going to. I think there's a lot to be said for the mysteries of it all, like the Clone Wars, for instance. Obi-Wan Kenobi's like, "Oh, the Clone Wars," and you're like, "Oh, cool! Now you've seen the Clone Wars. It's what you thought is it now? I don't know. I mean, it's a great show, but I know not everybody likes it. Maybe that's not what they all expected the Clone Wars to be. Maybe they didn't think it was all going to be a clone of Jango Fett as the clones, right?
Yeah,
so
pretty wild, right?
It's always going to happen. So I think we have to just kind of accept the evolution of Star Wars more than anything.
Yeah.
And at this point, right now, what I think needs to be focused on is a clear directive of the franchise, and just kind of clear this path of, don't worry about anything beyond 10 years or whatever, but just say, okay, our focus now is this High Republic thing. This is the point. The point of the High Republic is this. The point of going back to this era is this. And then everything they do can be focused on that point. And we don't have to worry about the Skywalker saga. We don't have to worry about the Mandalorian or anything else. You focus on that. You tell me your one cohesive story in that moment. And you can do that in movies, books, video games, comics, everything. It doesn't matter. But everything is now has a focus and a game plan. And I think we'll all be more satisfied because we'll feel like, okay, this connected. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And we don't have to worry about it connecting to the Skywalker saga because it's far enough removed from it that as long as the little things are ticked off, like the Sith can't be running rampant around, which they probably will be because that's Star Wars. But as long as the Sith aren't running rampant, they could screw whatever you read in Legends, right? They could be like, I don't care.
I think that's exactly what they're doing.
That don't worry about. Yeah. And you know what? They should, because we've read those stories. So give me something else. And if I don't like it as much, I still have the book to go back to.
Totally. What I would say to people is, this is, I would say, first of all, completely within your rights to be skeptical. I think after the past couple of years, even if you're really high on the sequel trilogy or you're really low on it, either way, I think that most Star Wars fans can admit that, not necessarily the best job in the last 5 years, Disney. So I can admit that, being skeptical about going to this time period, I get it. But I would also say that, to your point, it's removed enough from the prequels and the Skywalker saga in general to not really mess with that at all. And it's also far enough removed from the actual Old Republic that as long as they're not going to take Revan and put Revan into this time period and make the High Republic their version of the Old Republic, then they're at least being respectful enough to kind of keep all that stuff separated as well. And this, to me, does really represent a clean slate. This is a clean slate, more or less, but it's also connected enough to Star Wars to feel like Star Wars. It's going to matter because things, characters, and events are going to form the decisions and the events that then take us into the prequels. So I think, what I would tell people is, I get it. I get that you're, skeptical, but to me, this actually does feel like a good idea. But then again, I'm a Disney shill. I'm going to cash the check right after this episode. Yep. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Oh my goodness, yeah, checks. They won't even direct deposit me. They have to. The shill checks are real big and shiny too. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But James, before we get out of here, man, let people know about the Rebel Scum podcast. Not enough people are knowing about this Rebel Scum podcast, one of my most favorite shows on the internet. We actually put you on the map. Yes, you did. Actually, we fired you, and then you did your own thing. And so now with the Rebel Scum podcast, with the Rebel Scum podcast on YouTube, we talk all things Star Wars. We go live every Monday night at 7 Eastern. And then we have a podcast every Wednesday at 7 Eastern. And then we sprinkle in some stuff throughout the week. Sometimes you show up, sometimes you don't. You haven't in a while because, again, we fired you. So we don't allow you too much. But yeah, we have fun time. We have fun talking Star Wars. Yes. I think that's we the joke big around. Thing. We have a good time. Yeah, you guys have a lot of fun over there. You keep it very positive, which is really cool, and I appreciate that as well. And I would love to try to keep it as positive as I can too. But you know me, I get out there, I piss everybody off on the internet. But guys, that has been this video. Let us know what you think about all of this. If you're concerned about the High Republic, let us know. If you're not concerned at all, let us know. Let us know why. Let's start the conversation. Get it going in the comment section. Thank you guys so much, James. Thanks for being here, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Awesome. No worries. Had a blast. As I always say, I hope you guys are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.